Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War, Warhammer 2 quick match gameplay. This time around we are on Waprat Gulch for a bit of a Dreadfleet against a Dwarf action. And in this match I decided to go with a similar comp to the one I recommended recently. I did a bit of an Adeptus Titanicus build with the Vampire Coast. I just brought a whole bunch of Higher Titans like a total jerk, or not Higher Titans, but Necrofex Colossi. And after the battle, I recommended a certain build that I think would be good for the Dwarves, and so I decided to run that here, essentially. I don't remember the exact build I recommended there, but this is a similar build. I centered around Rune Lord, very wide, very cannon-heavy, very artillery-focused, so regardless, just kind of break it down and see what happens. So for my Lord, I did bring the Rune Lord. Obviously, incredibly tanky choice. He's got 4,000 HP, he's hard to knock over, he's got 120 armor. His missile resist right now with the Master of Grungni, missile resist, physical resist, he's up to 60% missile resist. He's not going to be getting sniped by cannon fire or something like that anytime soon. He also does have 55% magic resist, which is pretty slick. And of course, he's providing with the Locus of Power, he's providing that same magic resist, or 15% more magic resist to all of my infantry, which potentially, if my opponent went magic heavy, or was trying to make use of magic weapons, which there are few, this could actually be a big boon. Of course, we do have the Master of Grungni for that missile resist, a Master of Wrath and Ruin for the magic damage, as well as to slow and control my opponent if he went with a more aggressive build, and then a Master of Negation, because that defense is just so good. For the front line, 2 Dwarf Warriors to provide us with some shields and greater survivability in the front, as well as to ensure that the miners can get their blasting charges off. And we actually have 6 units of miners spaced out all around to cover the front line. Miners, of course, are probably going to trade okay with zombies. I honestly don't know how well miners will trade with zombies. I haven't tested it. Obviously, miners do not have very good melee stats of their own, but they do have 80 armor, and those blasting charges will probably cut through squishy infantry very effectively. They might be able to even the odds before lines meet, and I'm not entirely sure how it boils down after that. For the rest of the army, 2 units of Slayers, one of which is the Dragonbacks, just the vanilla Slayers, no giant Slayers here. Then a quartet of cannons. These guys, of course, looking to counter battery my opponent. If you brought Carronades, if you brought Queen Bess, if you brought, of course, Necrofex Colossi, these guys can focus them pretty handily. And then 4 Rangers. These guys are spaced out, once again, pretty efficiently. And these guys can deliver a decent amount of damage. They've got Stalk, which is really good against enemy shooting. They've got shields of their own, so they won't do terrible in a straight stand-up shootout. And all in all, I think they're a decent unit, especially for the cost. I think they're better than Coralers in this matchup, simply because, well, you don't have that armor, and that's close quarters sustain. You do have much better mobility, and you have Stalk, which I think is just much more valuable in this matchup. They also don't have as much ammo, but honestly, I just don't think that's as worth it. Now for my opponent, he decided to go with a bit of an oddball build. For his Lord, he does have good old Count Noctilus. He is over here with Invocation of Nehek, the Wraithstorm, I think it's called, Arcane Conduit, as well as Drowned Dead, and he actually does not have his summon. He doesn't have the 200 range Roth's Moondial, so he won't be able to summon that on my backline, which is fortunate for me. He also does have an Necrofex Colossus, as well as the Queen Bess over here, who's going to be teeing off on my poor infantry almost immediately. For a secondary firing line, he's actually got 3 units of Deck Gunners, which are potentially very potent. They do bypass armor. They have shield sundering, or sorry, bypass shields. They do have shield sundering, which isn't going to be relevant here, but hey, it's pretty potent. And they outrange all of my missile units except for the artillery, so definitely pretty potent. Second, and then for front line, a whole bunch of zombie polearms as well as sirens. Zombie polearms, I think, are an interesting choice. They do have AP, and they're honestly, the melee stats from zombie pirates are just so bad that I'm not really sure you'd benefit from that extra melee attack and slightly better weapon strength against dwarves, as opposed to the AP on the deckhands. I'm not on the polearms, but they are 100 more expensive, so I'm not entirely sure how it exactly would add up, or how the math on that is, but regardless, they're definitely going to be pretty potent, and the Sirens are very hard for the Dwarves to kill. They've only got 3,600 HP, they've only got physical resist, no armor, not the greatest melee defense, but they do debuff melee attack with this cool ability here, Charmed, and they, obviously, Dwarves don't have much access to magic damage, so that's pretty potent. But they do have the disadvantage of doing magic damage themselves, which means my troops are immediately reducing their damage by 40%. Regardless, as my opponent does start waddling forward with Count Noctilus, he is going to take a volley of cannon fire in the face, and the Queen Bess kind of squandering some shots here in my Dwarf Warriors, because let's be honest, these guys are not that valuable to me. They're just Dwarf Warriors. He's trying to snipe away my cannon here, but the cannon is going to be able to start teeing off on the Queen Bess, whittling her down a bit, doing some damage there, though unfortunately not as much as I would like for the cannon to be doing. But Count Noctilus here is going to start taking a bit of a beating, and he's losing hundreds of HP to those cannonballs. Dwarven artillery, of course, is very accurate. Best dueling artillery in the game. in cost efficiency. So Noctilus here, he costs a lot, guys. This guy, don't underestimate his cost. He's 1,000. This is like 3,000 gold right here, probably. Maybe a little less, maybe like 2,500. But he's getting pounded down by those cannons. 3 cannons are on him. One of them is, of course, pounding away at the Queen Bess. And so Count Nocti is definitely not having a good day. As my opponent does start closing, we're going to start hitting these Sirens with focus fire from the Rangers. It might seem a little stupid, but do keep in mind that Sirens with no armor are going to be taking 25% of the damage from the Rangers. So the Rangers do have decent DPS. It's just that they don't have great necessarily armor piercing. So, you know, I'm kind of hoping to get some value there. Now the Sirens are going to immediately clash with my Dwarf race, and I don't have a rune, or I don't have the Rune of Hearth and Home, I think, which gives you immunity psychology, so the Dwarf warriors here are actually going to struggle a good bit. But the Sirens do actually start routing. We're going to hit these Sirens over here with a Master of Wrath and Ruin. Although my opponent is trying to take down this cannon over here, it's just not succeeding. And the Sirens are getting pounded into oblivion by the Ranger fire. And you can see this unit over here falling apart. Some of these guys are going to tear out, but they're going to stick around. They're Dwarves. They'll rally in a jiffy. Plus, because they're Dwarves and they're slow, they're not even going to run away very far before they rally and come back. And the Rune Lord, of course, is basically invulnerable to these guys. In the meantime, Count Noctilus is wavering and falling apart. He's having a god-awful time of it. And he can't really afford to wander too close, because if he does, I'm immediately going to focus him with all of my Rangers. And now, as my opponent does try to close the distance, we are going to swing wide with our Slayers and start pushing out on the flanks. And you can see the Sirens, who committed oh so early, just getting focused out by the Ranger fire, just being overwhelmed. Only one unit of them still around and kicking, which is really bad. And Noctilus is going to go down. He loses a leg. I love that animation. Actually sends these deckhands flying. This is actually the summoned unit that appeared from him dropping below 50% HP, but suddenly he's in a very grim spot. And now my cannon fire is surely going to be able to start focusing on the deck gunners, or actually I think it might have, I forget which unit I shifted to be quite honest with you guys. But you can see the Queen Bess here actually sticking around pretty well. We didn't manage to knock out the gun, which is pretty nuts. We mostly killed the crew, which is pretty crazy. But now we are going to switch fire onto the Necrofex Colossus. Perhaps a bit of a waste, honestly. I probably should have had the cannons firing on the deck gunners at this point, but, you know, what can you do? One of our cannons has been knocked offline. You can see the crew actually wiped to a man, I think. But at this point, it's too little too late. Queen Bess isn't going to be able to swing the tide there. Our crossfire of Rangers is going to take out the Sirens here, so these grumpy women are going to get destroyed. And actually, it's pretty cool that they now disappear. Before, you'd always have these corpses of... I'm pretty sure most ethereal units before would leave corpses, which is really kind of weird, but... you can see these zombie part deckhands, well, they do something. I'm not entirely sure. It doesn't seem like they're doing that much. They're not really delivering that well, but they're trying. And in the meantime, of course, the Dragonback Slayers are in on the back line. They are going to start slaughtering that Colossus. Over here on this flank, these Slayers swinging around to get into my opponent's back line, and the Rangers actually getting a little too aggressive here, a little too excited. Ironically, the Pole Armors here actually are going to get some benefit of their bonus first large against the Rune Lord. But the Rune Lord, of course, very tanky against missile play. These guys are losing like 60% of their damage against him. Forcing the Rangers here getting a little overzealous against the zombie part deckhands, but we are going to pull back in time. And at this stage, my opponent's army is simply crumbling. It's just GG. And that second Necrofex did get dragged into the muck. You can see we're now getting Rangers onto these deck gunners, and we're going to be able to start stomping them. And at this point, my opponent, you know, is going to be, well, he doesn't really force to GG. His army simply crumbles. And that is going to be game for the Indomitable Dawi. So... I think this, and I've said that I think there's a few matchups that are really grim for Vampire Coast, and honestly, I've had generally pretty good success with the Vampire Coast against Dwarves, but I think Dwarves definitely have an edge in this matchup. The fact that you have such potent artillery, now I think Empire, High Elves, Wood Elves are also 3 very powerful factions in this matchup, just because of how weak the Vampire Coast is in certain situations, against range especially, but Dwarves with their massive, very potent cannon fire. You can see these guys getting 2 chevrons, 1. These guys, there's so many chevrons gained, and that was just focusing down Count Noctilus, focusing down Queen Bess and Necrofex Colossus. And they were just doing great. And Noctilus, 25 kills on him is really not that impressive, especially against such a cheap chaff-heavy army. Dwarves can go very wide. Their chaff is pretty survivable against the trash chaff that the Vampire Counts put on the field. Sirens, well, with the Rune Lord, Sirens are doing 40% less damage, and their melee stats aren't that good to begin with. So really against Miners, sure, they're probably going to win against Miners in a protracted brawl. But it's not going to be some sweeping, decisive victory. And it's going to, in the meantime, these Rangers are racking up kills. And if my opponent went heavy with Depth Guard, well, we had a lot of crossfire to wail on them with. Depth Guard, I think, would be a terrible choice in this matchup. If my opponent went... plus, and you got to consider there's obviously alternate builds, and so your opponent, everyone has to consider those builds. Deck Gun's interesting choice, and I don't actually think they're necessarily that bad in this matchup, but they just didn't get that much value. 0, 10, 8, not that many kills. I'm not entirely sure what my opponent spent the game shooting at. I think he spent most of the game shooting at this cannon there. So they just didn't quite deliver the damage. Yeah, Deck Guns, it just didn't happen. And like the pole arms, yeah, they got some kills against miners. Great. Good job. But they are actually as expensive as miners blasting charges. And miners with blasting charges are going to dish out a lot of hurt and act as a great speed bump. So I just think this is a very good matchup for Dwarves. And Rangers, of course, are just a great counter to most of the DACA that the Vampire Coast can put on the field. And Rune Lord's good control option. Slayer's decent enough. Like Slayers, they compromise your backline, you're going to be in some trouble. They are a pseudo cav, and in this matchup, this is one of those few matchups because it's like almost like Dwarf on Dwarf. But in Dwarf on Dwarf, you don't want to bring Slayers because they're not going to trade that well with infantry. But in this matchup, because Vampire Coast doesn't have cavalry, but at the same time they don't have really have the fastest flexible response options to Slayers. I think Slayers are actually decent in the anti-infantry role as well. So. Regardless, good game to Hargon here. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. We found it entertaining and hopefully a little informative. I'm trying to break these matchups down in some way and hopefully help you guys out. If you guys ever struggle with matchups, hopefully these can help you out. As usual, if you have any comments, criticism, anything like that, be sure to share. If you have any requests for matchups, I can try to land a matchup for you guys. It's difficult, but if you have any, obviously you can't just get your opponent to cooperate with you. But if you have any matchups you guys would like to see or any factions you'd like to see demonstrated more, as usual, don't hesitate to request them. I'll do my best to get those in. If you have any comments and criticism, yep, as usual. I do thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed it, don't hesitate to leave a like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. I do appreciate the support. I thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.